I'm Carmine Gallo with Jim VendeHei, who is the co-author of a terrific book, Smart Brevity. It's a short book that really packs a punch and will elevate your career big time because it teaches you to say more with less. How do we do that? We'll find out. Jim, congratulations on the success of Smart Brevity. Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you for reading it, and thank you for the time.
Reading it? Jim, I've got two.
I love it.
One for my office and one for home, so I can refer to it whenever I need it.
I appreciate that.
I do notice that Smart Brevity has made bestseller lists, and I love that, honestly, because I think it advances the subject of communication, but it also addresses a topic that we do need to talk about. Almost everything in professional business communication is too long. Is that the big idea behind Smart Brevity?
Absolutely. Almost everything inside of every company that's written is written like it's 1990. It's way too long. It's not written with authenticity, and it's not written for the end reader, the worker, the consumer. It's just written out of habit, or it's written for the boss because the boss thinks they have a lot to say. And it's crazy. You know, Stuart Butterfield Slack pointed this out to me, and it really it sort of clarified my thinking on this. If you think about anybody at any level, at any company, you spend 50 to 70% of your day communicating, talking, writing, up, down, shareholder, customer, whatever it is. And nobody in school, nobody in the workplace actually teaches you how to do it better or more efficiently, which is insane because that's how you're spending most of your time. If you were doing anything else at work that was not productive or that could be done exponentially better, you would spend billions to fix that instantly because it would change your bottom line.
Well, in the spirit of being smart and brief, let's get right to it.
Yep.
I want to talk about the core four, which is the four main parts of the Smart Brevity writing system. I'm excited about these elements because I don't think they simply apply to emails or memos or writing, but also presentations as well, and we can get into it. But let's start with number one of the core four. Start with a muscular tease. I love that. I wish I had come up with that phrase. Can you explain?
Well, whether it's a headline or it's a subject line in an email or the first couple of words you put into a text, you got to understand you're in a hyper competition with it for that person's attention. You're competing against text alerts and Tinder alerts and whatever else somebody has set up. And so if you don't grab people in the first couple of seconds, you lost them. So everything else that you did will never get read unless you tease them and say, this is why you should read this. And you need to do it as succinctly and with as much muscle as possible. You want to provoke me, seduce me, make me want to read or hear what you have to say.
This relates to another section of the book where you say that the subject line of an email or the headline of a memo or an article should be no longer than 6 words. Is that what your data is showing? Why 6 words, Jim?
One, like when you think about a subject line, when you think about a headline, like people are looking for short and sweet, pull me in. The longer it is, the harder it is for the brain to process. So when you're thinking about a headline or a subject line, just think about words that resonate. Strong words are better than weak words. 1 syllable is better than 2 syllables. 2 syllables better than 3. And when you do that, you'll be able to get people to pay attention. Just think about your email when you go through your phone and you're looking at your inbox. What grabs you? It's either the person's name or the subject line. Well, then why aren't you spending more time thinking about that subject line? Give me 2 words that make me want to read it. Don't say something boring. Don't say something foggy. Otherwise, I'll scroll past you.
Let's make the distinction now between number one and the second element of the core 4 writing system. Number 2 is open with a strong, memorable sentence. How do we know when we've written a strong opener?
I think whenever you write something, you usually have at least one very important thing that you want to say. There's a reason you sat down to write it. There's a reason you're about to say it. So before you write it, before you say it, think. Think about like, what is the one thing I wish this person would remember from what I have to tell them? And then write it in as few of words as possible. Again, use sharp words, use strong words, don't use SAT words. Just say it succinctly and directly. And don't assume that if you bury it in the lower part of your email or the part of your message that someone's going to see it. Most likely they won't. So if you focus on one sentence, it forces your brain to distill it into one concept. As a writer who's run 2 media companies, I'm telling you 99.99% of the time, you can do it. Even if you think you can't, it can be done in one sentence. And it also signals to the reader that maybe this isn't going to be a chore. You're not just vomiting a big clump of text at them. You're actually saying, hey, this is what's important. Stay with me.
And speaking of this idea of opening with a strong, memorable sentence, it reminds me of a conversation, an interview I had recently with the novelist James Patterson. James Patterson says he spends most of his time on the opening sentence, not only of each book, but of each chapter. And his chapters are short, by the way. But this whole idea of putting most of your focus into the opening sentence, I think, is very powerful, that very few people think about.
But think about it. Otherwise, the important point that you had, you hit it and no one ever hears it and no one ever learns it and no one ever acts on it. You just wasted all of that time hiding the goodies in words. Don't do that.
The third element of the core 4, provide context or why it matters. I think this is where a lot of people might get tripped up. Why it matters means exactly that, but why it matters to the audience, not to you. Is that to totally clarify, Jim, why it matters to the audience, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, most people aren't experts at everything. So when you tell them something in one sentence, like what is like to you very important, that next sentence should be your why it matters. At Axios, we call it why it matters. Give them the context for why that point was so important. And it's important to them, not to you. So much of writing and communicating is self-indulgent. I want to talk. I want to be heard. I want to show off my fancy words. That's not what communication is about. The reason that you're communicating is you think you have something important to say for that person. Put yourself in the shoes of that person, of the audience. Tell them why it matters to them. There, you might also keep them going deeper into your piece or into your memo or into your email because you've told them something important and you've given them the context.
I may not have done this very well, but it does speak to the beginning of this conversation. So when we're having a video conversation and I would like for people to watch this discussion for 10, 15 minutes, however long it lasts, maybe more, they need to know why it matters to them. So just instinctively, because I'm a former journalist, at the very beginning, I said, listen to this conversation. It's going to be important to you because it will elevate your career. These are important skills to learn. So I think you can use this idea of why it matters in almost every kind of professional communication.
For sure. Like, again, like, especially when it's in a professional setting, like most information is transactional. It's ephemeral. It's of the moment. Make it as efficient as possible. Save people time. Make people want to read an email from you. Make people want to have a quick conversation with you. Think about it when you're at a bar. If someone is notoriously long-winded and self-indulgent, do you want to have a conversation with them? No, you want to get drunk and tune them out.
Right. Got it. Love your analogies, Jim. And number 4 of the core 4, this is important, but we need to explain it. Offer the choice to learn more or go deeper. Okay. How is that done, Jim?
So the way we think about it in journalism is if we tell you something that's new and then we tell you why it matters, we say go deeper, and you give the person the option. If they want to go in deeper, you can either write the things that are important to them, or you can provide links to the original data set, knowing most people aren't going to read it and most people aren't going to go to it. But if you're trying to do a service to that reader, for those couple of readers that might want to go deeper, make that part easy too. Give them that direct click, or when you're stacking information to validate your point or to back up your point, do it with bullet points and do it in hierarchy of what is the most important point, sub-point you're trying to make. And it's much more readable for the reader if you do it in bullets. People like to scan and skim. They don't like to look at globs of text. That makes the eye sad. The eye wants to be happy, and make it happy by making it very readable. And these are just things nobody teaches you in college. No one teaches you in the workplace. No one teaches you in high school. And in fact, we're taught the opposite. We're trained that like a real paper that gets an A has to be 5,000 words.
Mhm.
Well, what if they're 5,000 shitty words? Like, why not give me 500 great words that illuminate something new and important to me and help me make a better decision? That's fundamentally what the essence of professional communications is.
That's one of the tips and the advice that I offer executives and CEOs who I work with when they're creating presentations. If there is, or especially entrepreneurs who are giving pitches, if you're in person, let's just stick to a few slides. If you have a lot more information that is intended to be read, that's the appendix. So to me, that's the go deeper. Here's an option to go deeper, but I'm not going to waste your time right now.
Your instincts, by the way, are validated by the science. Like the PowerPoint is one of the dumbest things that we do in any workplace, because there's irrefutable evidence that the brain cannot look at something and consume simultaneously with listening and consuming. So if you have a PowerPoint and it's got all kinds of glitter and all kinds of stats and all kinds of words, and the person's like squinting there and trying to read it, they're not hearing you. So all a PowerPoint should be is just a simple guide for a conversation, and maybe with like the most arresting one stat that you have so that you can get some memorization. And because you're a natural communicator and you consult on this, like you understand that intuitively. But again, nobody's telling anyone that. I look even at our company where we're obsessed with smart brevity, and I see some of these presentations and I'm like, well, why are you doing that? It looks like a NASCAR. I don't want noise and nonsense. I want to have a very efficient meeting. That's what this is about.
Great segue to presentations. Let's turn to chapter 18 of Smart Brevity. Chapter 18 is valuable for anyone who wants to give presentations as part of their job. And you were very smart in this book, Jim, because I noticed that you cited one of my articles from the Harvard Business Review. So thank you. You're very smart.
It was great article.
But that article actually referred to a McKinsey partner who I had talked to. And one of the advice that they give these new consultants who come in, again, freshly minted MBAs, is that for every 20 slides in your PowerPoint deck, we want to see only 2 slides.
Yeah.
But reducing the number of slides isn't enough, of course. And you offer many great tips for simplifying presentations. But one in particular is hard to do, and I think it's very powerful, though. You say put one message per slide. And here's what you write in the book. People should absorb your point in 3 seconds max. Think of each slide as a billboard. Would someone racing by at 65 miles per hour get to the point? I'm sure there's a lot of pushback on that concept because I think presenters feel as though they have to include as much information as possible on each slide. So can you explain this theory or the thinking behind the 3-second rule?
The theory is that you're all you're doing if you have a lot more than that is you're distracting the person and they can't hear you. Again, you're doing the presentation for a reason. You want them to buy your company. They want you to invest in your company. You want to sell your idea to your teammates. Well, the best way to do that is to be able to have them focused and understand the central message that you're trying to deliver and what you're trying to get is the takeaway. Anything that distracts from that ruins your opportunity. And so you just want it to be a guidepost, a billboard, just like help control or direct the conversation so people know where they're going, but make sure the focus is on you as the communicator. And just understand that like our brains now, we're just hit with so much information. Like even as someone's listening to this, they're probably also looking at Twitter. Like that wasn't really happening 20 years ago. So obviously it has an effect on the brain. We're very distracted. And when you get distracted, it can take you up to 18 minutes to truly get refocused on a topic. So cut out the distraction, cut out the inefficiencies, try to get to the real basics of what it is you're trying to accomplish with this presentation, make it clear, make it concise, make it efficient, and make it memorable. And that's what you're trying to pull off.
Jim, finally, let's also be clear about when to use smart brevity. So I am surrounded by books in my office library. I love books, and this is going on my bookshelf. And at 200 pages or so, I think could be the thinnest book on my bookshelf. But that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy Walter Isaacson's Steve Jobs at 600 plus pages, or at home on my nightstand, I'm reading the new John Meacham biography of Abraham Lincoln. It's like 400 pages, then 200 pages of sources. And I'm okay with that. When do we apply smart brevity?
Yeah, I think smart brevity works in about 95% of circumstances. When anything is transactional, when anything's around planning, when anything's around business, the more efficient, the better. And what you're trying to do for yourself as a creator, and then for the consumer, is make way more of the ephemeral transactional information way more useful and way more efficient, so that you have time to read the Meacham book, so that you have time to read poetry or write poetry, so you have time to listen to Joe Rogan, or you have time to go for a run, or just have a life. Like that is ultimately what we're trying to do. And so, yes, it doesn't work for love letters necessarily, though maybe sometimes it's probably better than too much. But it does work in most business settings. And that's what the book is for educators, it's for people in business. But I think where it's most useful is, like, if you're in business and you have any ambition and you want to stand out, I truly believe it's the most useful guide written. And I don't say that with any kind of arrogance. Like, my background was, I covered the presidency. I could have written books like Meacham's writing, and I never chose to write a book because I'm not a big fan of looking backwards. I'm always trying to figure out where's the world going. And I just saw how useful smart brevity has been for us in creating a media company, and how successful companies have been that we work with that put this into practice. It's like they were blind and now they can see in terms of communications. It's why I wrote the book, because I feel like it really does make your life better. It makes you way, way more effective.
No, I'm already sold. I was a fan. That's why I've been dying to talk to you. And as you can probably tell, I've highlighted. The problem is I've highlighted something on every page. There's a nugget on every page of smart brevity. And like I said, it will be definitely a permanent part of both my libraries here and at home. Jim, what a joy to talk to you. Such important information. Thank you for writing the book. Thank your co-authors, Mike Allen and Roy Schwartz as well. And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you do. Really appreciate it.